I'm going to call this meeting to order, and we'll start with roll call. John, please.
DeSico. Demovic.
Here.
Heckman.
Here.
Slaughter. Here. Stimson.
Here.
Stuckey. Here. Willie.
Yes. Then I'll be looking for approval of the
May 19th and May 26 minutes, regular and special session, as well as a financial report for the end of May.
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda, the approval of minutes for May 19th, May 26th, and an approval of the financial report.
All
All those in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed? We're going to start this meeting with just some communication from the city. We do ask that everyone in the room has an opportunity to speak. There'll be a time here.
Dan Cleary, lots 4, 5, and 6, Rock Springs. So I want to tell you, I'm excited about G&G services. I saw there was a dry well plan for Mariposa and Blue River Road. I think it's about time the board tries something different. That may be a good solution. It'd be great to watch, and I'm excited to see what happens. There's a lot of people in here. I'm going to keep it really brief, but usually you only see a lot of people when they're mad. I'm going to let you know that my wife and I support the board. We want to just thank you for looking out for the community. I'm sure a lot of these people are angry about short-term rentals. What I would say is I just appreciate the board taking action, with a reasonable amount of time, whatever it takes necessary to ensure compliance and to review the regulations, right? So I don't know that the board's looking to overhaul the system or ban them permanently. And I think probably a lot of folks in here might think that. That's not what I heard last month. So essentially, I'm in support of the board, looking at who is not in compliance, taking a look at the regulations, and just making sure that it benefits the whole community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul Simmer, 272 Bluegrass Trail. My wife and I, Marty, are year-round residents in the town of Blue River since 1979. First, I'd echo a little bit what Dan said in terms of supporting you guys for all the hard work you do, and especially for tackling the short-term rental issue, which has been talked about for a long time, and it's obviously surfaced to a point needing lots of attention. With that regard, I would implore you to revisit the mission statement, which says the town of Blue River endeavors to nurture our serene mountain community by conserving our natural residential environment, promoting unity with our neighbors and surroundings, channeling the voice of our residents, and enhancing the quality of life. That also was included as one of the whereas statements in the previous ordinance. Please focus on that as it relates to the residents of the town of Blue River. In regards to that also, that whereas clauses does mention that short-term rentals are not necessarily a permitted use within certain zones, yet the town does have the ability to allow that, and you did that in a previous ordinance. I would implore you to revisit that and consider changes that have occurred, specifically the monitoring of that. My major concern has to do with the town of Blue River losing its identity as a unique mountain municipality in the town of Blue River. It's the only one like this. You look at Frisco, you look at Dillon, you look at Keystone, to some extent, Keeney. All of them are a little bit different and lean more towards a municipality, whereas Blue River really focuses on its residential community. So please focus on that. Let's not turn Blue River into a subdivision of the Kingdom of Breckenridge. With that regard, I would hope that as you move forward on this, you entertain the possibility of bringing in a third party or a consultant to help facilitate your discussions, and also consider that many of the people involved in decision-making may have properties involved in the short-term rental program and may have to be recused from decision-making to make it as impartial and unbiased as possible. There's no doubt in anybody's mind the community is very concerned about short-term rentals and want to protect the character of the town of Blue River. So appreciate the opportunity to speak forward and definitely want to be involved as you move forward on those decisions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Wait, there's one standing, so we'll go, whoever stands first.
Can I have permission to approach?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I should think so.
Well, this has been taking away from my time.
You're supposed to say you've been served.
Now it's been said.
Thank you.
My name is Larry Nelson. I've lived in the town of Blue River 47 years. I've been a trustee for approximately 26 years and mayor for approximately 6 years. This is our home. Wondering if the board could please provide a detailed accounting of how the $1,500 annual short-term rental renewal fee for a 3-bedroom, 3-bath being spent. You don't have to answer me at this point, but I would like a written response from the board. Does the fee reflect actual administrative and enforcement of short-term rentals and monitor a short-term rental license for $1,500 for a 3-bedroom, 3-bath? If costs are lower than revenue collected, where is the excess going? The town already has ordinances covering noise, parking, occupancy limits, trash, nuisance behavior. I know that for a fact because I instituted some of those ordinances. If these rules that are on the books aren't being enforced, creating more regulations will not solve the problem. Could you please supply the number of short-term rental complaints received, the number of warnings, the number of citations issued, the number of repeat offenders, the number of complaints received involving short-term licensed versus unlicensed short-term rentals. Short-term rental fees generate substantial revenue, dedicate part of the revenue to code and traffic enforcement and police response rather than increasing fees for thrift. Many owners purchased homes and made investments relying on the rules that existed when they bought or put properties under contract. Realtors believe property values in Blue River have fallen 20 to 30% overnight. I'm a realtor. I talk to people. The loss in property values relates directly to the amount of property taxes that the town is going to collect. 6 months of these prices for these homes that don't sell affect this whole town. I support enforcing the ordinances and holding the bad actors accountable. However, before increasing fees or creating new restrictions, the town should show residents the town is effectively enforcing the rules that are already on the book. All of them are being spent. Again, my name's Larry Nelson, former mayor and trustee. I'm a 47-year resident of the town of Blue River. I've got a few more minutes. Give you a little idea of my past in this town. Jeff Gronowski was one of the first marshals in this town. Jeff and I put up almost every speed limit sign that you see in this town. Almost every sign that's a street sign. That's a lot of signs. That was all done as volunteer work. Complete volunteer work. And if you look around at the signs, ask for all of you to reconsider whatever in the hell it is you think you're doing. There's plenty of rules. The problem is there's not plenty of enforcement. You got a court, you got a prosecutor, use them. Thank you all.
Trail, and I completely support my husband Paul and Dan mentioned, and multiple times for you tackling the short-term rentals, because as Paul pointed out, that it is we can be actually looking at tipping in the direction of not following our mission statement. And I think that is so important to make the connection. And I also, just the idea that you are looking out for the best interest of our community, our residents who live here, there is way more to quality of life other than short-term economic gain. And we have a natural residential environment that drew many of us to come here. And I'd like to, at this point, take the opportunity I called on a violation of the short-term rental that is right next to our property. And actually, she was on our side of the property line with her dog. And so I have to commend Officer Mulinax, I guess I said his name right. He came out and he was so kind, warm, professional, and did an education for that lady. In fact, he did not know where the property boundary lines were. One thing I'm recommending is that be posted in every unit that's short-term rental property. Where are the boundary lines of that particular property? And then also, what is the official access to get to public lands? Because this lady said to me, "Oh, you mean I should stay on the road and just not go across?" Well, she didn't realize it was private property. So anyhow, and I think not everything is always a violation. I think it's really important that that there's an educational component, which I call caring for our community, that can be tips, but not necessarily violations posted. And once again, I thank you all for tackling this issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Marty.
I'm Cliff O'Bannon. I'm here representing myself and my husband, Josh Cockdill. We have been residents of Summit County since 2021. We actually first moved here to Blue River as renters, and we fell in love with Blue River. We fell in love with Colorado, and we came here from New York City during the pandemic. Real original story, right? So it was a huge change of lifestyle for us, and it was exactly what we wanted, what we needed, and we love this community. So my husband is actually the CEO of Elevated Community Health, which used to be the Summit Community Care Clinic. So it's a safety net provider for Summit County and the surrounding communities. I actually work in affordable housing compliance, nonprofit that's out of Los Angeles. We have a national footprint. So my work isn't focused locally, but I sit on the board of the Hospital Foundation. My husband sits on the board of the Keystone Science School. He and I both are CMC mentors. We are with FDRG. We're volunteer rangers, and we support FERC and Timberline Adult Daycare and Smart Bellies. So we are active community members. And Coyote Plata on April 20th, and we got our rejection for the SDR license the week after the emergency moratorium. So we were a little surprised, but we also felt a little bit like we weren't the ones that this was targeting. So there are a couple things, and I think the first thing that we really want to just express publicly is a concern for the lack of communication regarding this decision and how it was reached. We watched the May 19th recorded meeting, and from what we can tell, it seems like perhaps there wasn't a lot of real analysis or methodology behind it. And then the two major concerns that were flagged, I think was at 30 STRs that were unlicensed. This moratorium doesn't affect them. They're unlicensed. They don't care about this moratorium. And then the other one was fire pits. And if fire pits are a public safety concern, if they're a public safety concern this summer, then a moratorium does nothing, because those people already have licenses. So the ones that are really being impacted are people like me and my husband, who are not absentee owners. We are local active community members who went into this with the best of intentions, with the understanding that Blue River was open to STRs. And in fact, at the mayor-manager forum in April, my husband heard Chad mention, "Hey, Blue River, doesn't have restrictions on STR," right? So it very much made it seem like Blue River was open for business, advertising that this is something that differentiates us from Frisco and Breckenridge and Silverthorne. So it made us that much more confident in the work that we were doing. So here we are, $80,000 already into renovating to ensure that a part of it obviously is beautification, right? But the other part is safety. We've already removed the illegal fire pit. It's already gone. We have an issue with our banister, and for some reason the previous owners didn't have a banister. So we've actually invested in legitimate safety requirements for this. So we feel a little bit targeted for some, and we feel like the moratorium is targeting people who actually aren't responsible for the concerns that are being raised. The biggest concerns, again, around fire and around unlicensed STRs. Those are not addressed by this moratorium, and the thing that actually would address them is the actual mechanism for enforcement, which is the annual renewal of certification or licenses, right? So I guess that's the one piece, right? Is help us understand what issue you're actually addressing here. I think if you could provide some transparency around the methodology, that would be appreciated. And then the other piece is assuming you all acted in good faith, and I believe that you did, not questioning that, but assuming that you did, and there are things about this that we don't know, that we're not privy to. The other piece is I would hope you would consider exemptions for people like me and my husband who are locals. We are active members of this community, and we're being penalized for things. Again, the two major concerns that the moratorium does not even address: the fire and the unlicensed STRs. So
I
thanks.
appreciate your time.
Hi, I'm Doug O'Brien, 461 Crown Drive. Been Blue River resident for 35 years. Support everything you guys are doing, trying to do. I feel like we're a little out of control with the short-term rentals, especially in my neighborhood, the Crown. And I'm worried about water and septic and overuse. I do understand we are Blue River. We don't have a cap, and that's the way it's been advertised. But at some point, enough is enough. And I'm not saying a cap is the way to go, but I am thankful you guys are looking at the overall situation. and like support for over exceeding occupancy and all that. And I just I hope we can figure something out to make this work for everybody. That's my opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you for.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Backus, Gray Squirrel Lane. And I guess I'm confused too, like a lot of people here. I don't understand what constitutes an emergency for a moratorium. I guess that would be my first question, and I would like somebody to explain that. And we've had our house up for sale, and now Larry, who's our realtor, it's just gone down 20 to 30%. So that's a hardship. Not only me, but a lot of people in Blue River. I've been here 30 years, and I guess this is what I have been told. 10% of the total rental market are the ones, now I don't know if that means 30 people, I don't know how many that means, but that means that those 10% are punishing the 90%, and the people that are looking to buy or have bought, and they can't rent it out now. That's a hardship. And why 6 months in order to figure out or to punish the 10%? I think that's probably the most important thing. I don't understand what failed. Why? So somebody's not doing their job. Do we have a code enforcement officer? Does the town have one? No. Well, that might be a good idea. That might be something, and that would be on their list of things to do and to check and make sure everything and everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. It's not difficult. This isn't rocket science. And the punishment is really, really bad. And I agree. I think that people who come here and visit and do things should behave, but they should be kept in check by our code enforcement person or the police or somebody. And the people here in Blue River are really nice. I know that we have people that have rented and they've done something, and we would just go over and say, you can't let your dog go. And had that continued, we probably would have reported it. But that's all people know. They just want to come. They're on vacation. They want to have a good time. They don't want to annoy anybody. Right, John? Okay, that's all I wanted to say. I just want an explanation. And I really want to know how many people really caused this whole thing and what an emergency moratorium consists of. Fair enough? Thank you.
And I've been in love with Colorado for about as long as I can remember. I grew up in Kansas City, the second again and west, where my parents had honeymooned, and 23 years ago, where my wife and I honeymooned. Having a house in Colorado has been a lifelong dream for me. Not something I ever thought would actually be possible because I have 4 kids, and I've spent most of my career in nonprofit work, which is not very lucrative but very meaningful work. 2.5 years ago, though, we took our kids to ski over in Copper Mountain for the very first time. And after 2 days of skiing, my twin boys, who were 11 at the time, I kid not, told me that skiing is better than Disney World. It's about the best compliment I think you can get. During the pandemic and this spring, I told my kids that I was looking at a property here in Colorado. They couldn't quite believe it because we haven't been at it all this long, but when I found 6871 Highway 9, I knew this could be the biggest purchase of my life, and I had to get it really right. So before I made offers, I met with 2 contractors I went over to the Summit County Permit Office and learned I was in the wrong place. I stopped over at the Blue River Stand. I went over through every possible channel I could find. I reached out to Chad, had some emails and conversations with him. I think I emailed with John. I talked to Kyle about permitting process. I reached out to the county assessor to triple check I wasn't missing anything at all, because I knew that if I bought this house and couldn't rent it, it would be a very significant hardship for my family. But all the lights were green. So on May 13, 6 days before the emergency moratorium was passed, we closed on the purchase of the house. I was so excited that night. I walked over to meet my new neighbors on Highway 9, introduced myself to them. I told them we were going to be fixing up the house. I gave them my phone number. I had to write it down. I said, hey, if you ever have any problems with my contractors or any guests, I want you to call me. I care a lot about you. I actually do that anytime I set up a house, because I think it is important to be good stewards and good neighbors. I remember exactly where I was standing about a week later when the email came through of the town's newsletter about the moratorium. I was actually in the parking lot of those 11-year-olds who are now 13 at a Little League baseball game. I started reading it afterwards, and it felt like I'd kind of gotten whacked with a bat. Even a delay through the end of the year creates a significant financial strain for my family. And I share that not as a complaint, but just because it's true. We made this purchase based off of what the town told us was possible. And we would not have moved forward if we had any indication at all that a permit process might be put on hold. Now, I certainly understand the need to review policy, and I understand that it's very important, the responsibilities that have been given to you to care for the community and follow its mission and review and implement enforcement. So all I'm asking for tonight is something very narrow that you've heard from others, is that those of us who had already purchased and who had clear intent to have a short-term rental be grandfathered in, so that we can move forward and not experience a significant hardship. That ask also comes with a sincere offer to help in any way that I can. I have actually spent most of my career helping to facilitate conversations among different stakeholders to find some workable solutions to complex problems. I've had to do that many, many times in the nonprofit world. So I sent a note to the town manager and to the mayor offering to serve in any capacity, whether that's a working group or an advisory committee, or just coming and showing up at town meetings here. So thank you so much for your consideration, and thank you for your service to our community.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any more citizen comment? Okay. I'm gonna go ahead then, and we're gonna start the work session, and we're gonna get a presentation from the town of Breckenridge regarding current designs for an addition to the Gary Roberts water treatment.
Hello, everyone, and Board of Trustees, good afternoon. I'm here as just mentioned on behalf of the town of Breckenridge. My name is James Phelps. I'm the Public Works Director and oversee the water utility. There's a memo in your packet. I hope everyone had an opportunity to review that. It provides a lot of the background for this project. This project is just simply stated is a rehabilitation of the original water treatment plant for the town of Breckenridge. The original plant was constructed in 1972, and so it's now, as also stated in the memo, it's less than 55 years old by the time we start the reconstruction of this plant. It's located at the base of the Goose Pasture Tarn Dam, for those who are familiar with where the Tarn Dam is at. That plant, up until 3 years ago, was the main plant for all of the surface area, not only in town of Breckenridge, but all the way down to Summit High School. So it has a service area that takes in all the businesses of that area and the residents that are in that service area, including some areas of Peak 7 as well. It was actually a project that was identified in on our water pro forma in the mid 2015 as a project that needed to be done. But we learned, the town of Breckenridge learned in 2016 that the Goose Pasture Tarn Dam had an issue. There was a dam failure that was occurring that required full attention to repair that dam embankment, consequently the spillway. So as a result of that, this project has been kind of delayed and it's been coming, and now we're bringing it to hopefully completion. What I'd like to do, hopefully I provided some of the summary and background of the project. Also joined today by our design engineering firm, SGM, Justin Kevnig, and also the town of Breckenridge, town of engineer, Shannon Cahill, to take any questions. The project will include a building expansion. Again, those of you familiar, if you can picture it, and also there are some renderings in there, will effectively make new buildings on kind of the bookends of the building as it is right now. All the construction is on property that's owned by the town of Breckenridge, and so there won't be any impacts to any easements or any other land acquisition as part of this. The project duration right now, although we're still really preliminarily stating this, is probably three years, starting in 2028. And of course, our next steps are to engage with a contractor, and so we can really refine that schedule, and then also kind of work towards really containing the costs. This is the numbers in there. It's not an inexpensive project. It's currently sitting at about $54 million, which has really escalated over the last 10 years from the original pricing of this project. So we're really focused on trying to stay inside of that budget. And I think with that, I'll just take any questions that trustees may have.
Are there any plans to put solar on? I'm looking at the renderings. I don't see any solar panels on there, and it occurred to me that looks as if it's kind of facing east. It might be a possible spot to put some.
I'm going to let Justin answer that. I know we did look at that, but we do have some constraints. Justin, could you?
Yeah, the building will at a minimum be solar ready just to conform with the updated energy code. And so we may end up actually putting panels on it as part of the project. So it's just not drawn in the renderings yet. It is being considered.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Good. Thank you. I'm just to let everyone know too, our next steps is we will be coming in for a building permit. And we do anticipate that there'll be one, maybe a variance on, we are trying to hit the International Building Code, the IBC, but there potentially will be a variance into that will be requested as part of this project. Yes.
Thank you.
Next, Casey with G&G Services regarding summer maintenance.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Town Board. Thanks for letting me talk here tonight. So we're underway on our summer road maintenance. We've almost completed all of our initial grading and reshaping of roads. We're going to start applying mag chloride and doing some road resurfacing in the next coming weeks to the next coming months. I wanted to talk to you guys today. You should have got an estimate of some drainage improvements for capital improvements that we'd like to try to complete this year. I'll kind of go through a couple of the bigger ones. We have that one on Blue River Road and Mariposa Way. We'd like to try a dry well in that location and see if we can alleviate that road. We have a lot of pooling water that sits there, and it blows out the entire road every year because there's nowhere for that water to go. Another big project that I would like to try to complete is the Royal Regal Circle project. On that road, on that loop, we have a lot of ditches in places. A lot of residents have filled in their driveways to essentially gain access to their property. There's only a few driveway culverts on that road. And I'd like to propose that the town pays us and covers the installation of the culverts and make it a drainage system. We have an outlet on Blue River Road that I think we can drain to and get drainage for most of that Royal and Regal Circle. So we'd be installing driveway culverts on all the driveways that would need it, redefining that ditch and getting all that to flow to Blue River Road, so improving that whole entire section of the area. We have actually recently found some more culverts, so that's one on 97 Circle and Aspen Meadows Drive. We found that the other day, so we're going to try to clean that out and rehabilitate it. But that may turn into a culvert replacement because there's no way for us to tell how it looks right now. 97 Circle and 97 Circle, kind of where it lies into the intersection, there is no drainage culvert there. We'd like to install one and daylight it down the road. Because again, all that water pools there and it blows up the road. Crown Drive and Highway 9, that's a culvert that I need to get clarification if it's the town's culvert or CDOT's culvert. It's about 50 plus feet off of the highway, so I'm gonna assume it's probably the town's. It's completely plugged. You can only see at the top of the outlet there. I would say that's a lower priority one because it does have such a big settling pool that the water does dissipate in. And then we've identified one on Hinterland Trail that we're going to clean out. And there is another spot for a dry well up on Coronet Drive. We did the baseline decks project on there last year. The road held up really good, but there's a low spot on the bottom of 2 hills, and there's nowhere for the water to go. So it looks like there should be a culvert there, but I can't find either end. So it might be a plastic pipe. So I'd like to get permission from the homeowners to dig around a little bit on both the inlet side and the outlet side, see if we can find the culvert. If not, I'd like to install a dry well there. And I think we're going to continue this year with base bind X on another road. I'm thinking maybe Crown or Blue River Road. They're very high traffic roads, or possibly Upper Spruce Creek above where it was paved. But that road's been holding up pretty good from what I've seen. And then we'll just be continuing with our re-road basing and smaller ditch projects and culvert cleanings. I think that's pretty much the gist of it. So, do you guys have any questions for me? I think it was mentioned too on Bluegrass Trail might have been a good option for a dry well. And I looked at that today actually, and we found the culvert there. So we might try to shoot it with a laser and see if we can get enough drop to go to that culvert, clean out that culvert, and maybe possibly raise the road in that location to get the fall there.
Any questions?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Finally, a work session regarding the ordinance and part.
Start off?
Sure.
Everybody, thanks for coming tonight. Appreciate y'all voicing your opinions and concerns, both for and against short-term rentals. It is a touchy subject. I asked to have this put back on the agenda tonight to revisit the moratorium. So I wrote my comments, my thoughts down on this. It's about 6 minutes. And I just wanted, so I don't waste a lot of time. I know other people have things to say. Let me first start by saying my reason for wanting to revisit the emergency moratorium is because in hindsight, I believe it was a mistake to impose it. The decision to do this was based on one trustee's concern that the majority of short-term rentals in Blue River are not following the rules, which was based on that person's random review of about 30 properties. While it does really concern me that this may be true, I now believe that imposing this emergency moratorium or any moratorium was a knee-jerk reaction and that it should be repealed. Since I've been a trustee, the topic of short-term rentals has come up and been discussed frequently up until now. Compliance on how people advertise their properties online have been monitored and enforced by our town manager. Our previous town manager told us that the issuing licenses, monitoring how they were advertised, dealing with complaints or violations, and enforcing the rules was very time consuming. We were also told that overall most people were in compliance with how they advertised and were mostly following the rules. This was by the previous manager. Enforcing all the town's ordinances, including short-term rental compliance, was a duty that was normally expected to be carried out by the town police. Police chief said he and his staff did not have the time to do this and it was not a good use of their time. So as a result, the trustees asked the town manager to hire a new staff member that person's job was to monitor how properties were being advertised and driving around to see if people were following the rules. Not only short-term rentals, but all ordinances. The new person was hired and would report to our monthly meetings on how it was going. This new person seemed to be working out. However, I still don't understand why or what happened, but between the town manager and the chief, it was decided that the code enforcement officer was not working out. So with no warning, discussion, or notice to the trustees, the code enforcement officer was let go. Also, at the same time, we were directing the manager to be looking into an electronic monitoring platform to monitor short-term rentals. Unfortunately, while the same concerns kept coming up with the trustees, nothing substantive was pursued by our previous town manager. Now that we have a new town manager, all of the same issues are still being discussed, and the need for more staff and a computerized platform is still something the trustees want to accomplish. In the meantime, it was business as usual with our short-term rental program, and there was no apparent emergency or crisis going on. Now that we have a new town manager, I'm assuming that sometime in April or May, Trustee Willie, on her own accord, decided to conduct an informal review of around 30 random properties by going online to see if they were in compliance with our rules. She identified that around 9 out of 10 people were non-compliant, and several did not have short-term licenses at all. This was concerning to her, and so she brought it to the attention of certain people at the town. This is where it gets a little murky for me because I don't know exactly who she spoke with. What resulted from those conversations, however, was the drafting of a request to put forth what we now have today, which is the emergency moratorium. It is important to note that there had been no prior meetings or conversations with the trustees about up to this point. Trustee Willie did contact me a few days prior to the May meeting to let me know what was going to be discussed. Based on that discussion, on that conversation, and then the meeting with 6 of the trustees that were present, the town attorney and the town manager, I thought the only issue was that the town needed to purchase a software program that could more efficiently monitor how and what short-term rental properties were advertising on the internet. The program that Breckenridge uses was primarily discussed as one we should look into and commit to purchase. I'm very much in favor of figuring out and implementing a monitoring platform. In addition, I want to put a priority on hiring a new staff member to enforce not only our short-term rentals, but all of our ordinances. What was frustrating is that we have been talking about this ever since I became a trustee, and suddenly now it's an emergency. Trustee Willie doing an independent review and analysis is not an issue for me because I'm glad she did it. What I am more interested in understanding is at the point Trustee Willie felt this was an emergency and contacted someone at the town to share her concern. I am interested to know who determined that this was an emergency crisis or a crisis and who made the decision to have the town attorney draft the emergency ordinance. Our town attorney has stressed on several occasions that any individual or trustee cannot direct any employee of the town to do something or give them a directive without the consensus of the other trustees. To the best of my knowledge, other than a brief phone call from Trustee Willie, there was no discussion with the trustees prior to this moratorium being brought to the meeting. I was relying more on the phone call from Trustee Willie and the conversation at the May meeting to make my decision to vote in favor of the moratorium. While I guessed, and I did vote in favor of it. While I had glossed over the draft of the moratorium that was emailed to everybody previously from the town attorney, I did not scrutinize it. I also stressed at the meeting that I thought 3 months was adequate and that 6 months was excessive. I later read through the moratorium about 6 times. And I picked up on different things every time, which I had no idea were going to be discussed as part of this moratorium. I later read through the moratorium based on those discussions. I thought that the only issue was expediting and getting a monitoring system in place. I will also mention that I did not know this was going to be an emergency moratorium, and frankly, I didn't even know, embarrassingly, there was a moratorium and an emergency moratorium. Now I do. One bullet point that I later discovered in the moratorium, of which I had no idea was going to be on there, nor do I recall it being mentioned or discussed, was the discussion on limitations or restrictions on the number of short-term rentals in subdivisions or within the town. Therefore, I would request that the trustees consider repealing the emergency moratorium and to not impose any moratorium at all. At the same time, I want to commit and purchase a software program that can monitor our short-term rentals, and I want to hire new staff member to enforce our short-term rental rules and our ordinances. That's why I brought this up. That's it for me. Didn't know if anybody else wanted to comment.
I should probably speak. John Heckman, I was not here at the meeting in May, so sorry to all the citizens. But I made it aware at the April meeting that I would not be there. I think that is part of the reason that this emergency got passed and or was brought up at that time. Because I think the only thing that we have done with emergency we've seen in this town, at least in the last 2 years I've been on the board, was stop CDOT and putting a chain-up station in our town, which was actually an emergency to save our town. Not a lot of other things in this town are an emergency. And yes, we haven't been doing our job. But this whole thing, to my knowledge, from what I've listened to Bob say, should not have ever been allowed or been allowed to be brought to the board as a vote at all. Because yes, like Barry said, people are not allowed to impose personal agendas. And if they have bias, must recuse themselves. And I think all of that occurred. It's bad that it happened. Best to change it, but we can. But yes, at the same time, we do have a problem, and the rules need to be enforced. But I don't think we need more rules. And I think it's clear by the number of people that showed up on both sides, but mostly on the side of more, in my opinion, citizens wanting to know what was going on and not have an emergency passed when it's not actually an emergency. And I think that we should find a way to have a vote tonight to repeal it. That's all.
So it wasn't just 30 properties, right? Like that's kind of what I spoke about. It's not just 30. It's significant. If I go online today, I'd still find more. So it wasn't just the 30. And we've been talking about and have comments since I've been on the board. That's 2 years. So everyone had the same materials. Everyone had the same piece of paper that explained the moratorium. I talked to Bob. I asked how we can get this on the agenda. I said, can you put it on the agenda? He's like, no, you have to, talk to other board members and get their approval to put it on the agenda, which I did and I received. And that's the game. That was the time to ask any questions, make sure everyone understood, the 3-page ordinance. There is a difference between emergency and ordinary. Bob might be able to go through that if there's questions about it, but
Why was I singled out to be the board member that not notified by knowing that I could have received a text or been told to read my email while I was on vacation? I don't think that was very fair to the citizens, clearly, because they're all here, or to me, or to the board. And it ultimately just made us look like the last board, and that's why all of us got elected unanimously. Because we don't want to look like the last board. We don't want to do that.
Well, I did see it posted on the public agenda, so that is out there every month, and
People made personal phone calls and text discussing this.
And it does go with public comment, just like everyone showed up today, provided public comments, which is great. We're so glad. I wish people would show up more often to state their feelings and kind of provide their ideas for town direction and the way everything should go. So once again, I'm glad you're all here. I'm glad that you did read that agenda and did show up for the public comments this time. So it was there. And from my point of view, the moratorium, the faster we got it in place, the more quickly some of the issues can be addressed. And that software is on the agenda this evening to go forth. But I want to support the staff and what they have to do to maintain these short-term rentals and deal with all the complaints, licensing, and other issues that are forth. The moratorium doesn't say it has to be in place for a specific amount of time. It says it's there while we address issues and hopefully get them in place.
The only other emergency ordinance that we passed in my 4 years in this seat was when the guy had a legal hunt and shot the moose. And I was opposed to that as an emergency because the moose was dead. In this instance, it was my understanding that we passed it as an emergency ordinance, and there was public notification. No one showed up. And I'll echo Ms. Dimovich's, happy you're all here tonight. But this was passed as an emergency ordinance so that we could get to work on it, so that the moratorium wouldn't last 6 months, because we can lift it when the work is done. And the intent was to support the staff. Our interim town manager, between the previous town manager and the current, who helped us find the current, Steve Rabe, called me in January, and he had gotten COVID, and he asked me if I could come by town hall and check on John B, who was struggling mightily with all of the short-term licensing requirements that are placed on staff in order to dot I's, cross T's, ensure compliance, and get everyone's licenses issued. As part of our process, I think one of the things that we were intending to talk about, which we haven't yet, but nothing has really, I don't think, been accomplished yet, except for pissing people off, apparently, and making some people happy, is that I lost my point. Come by and check on John. We want to make sure that the staff is, to allow people to start putting in their application for a license earlier in the year so that John and the staff have more time to process them. So I think that our intent was good. I don't think our intent is to make the moratorium last as long as we can. If you have a short-term license already, this moratorium isn't doing anything to you that I'm aware of. If you don't have one, you shouldn't be making bookings anyway, because that's illegal, as I understand it, having read through 31 pages of our short-term rental program that we revamped last November. We didn't just do this last month, but there's been problems. We have a police department because of short-term rentals. Larry made mention of a marshal. Well, yeah, we only used to have one until we started allowing short-term rentals. Short-term rentals are a privilege. It is true.
Well, let's keep this separate. We'll have a conversation on this.
Regardless,
Sorry.
I've been caused to lose my point again. I have nothing else except that our intention is to enhance enforcement, take burden off of staff, get a program in place, and to make this work for everyone. Oh, my point was that it is a privilege, not a right in this town. And it's enumerated in the 31 pages of short-term ordinance, short-term regulations that we came up with last November. That's all I have.
And I think, renewals don't happen until the end of the year. It is our goal is to get through this, come up with policy. We've done changes and little tweaks to do some regulations that weren't followed by all. And so it's a little bit broken, and we need new policy to go forward and to figure out what we're doing. That is what the moratorium is for. That's what was published and written. We're going to be working on it over the next several months, and hopefully sooner than later have a policy in place and move forward. And I know that it's a heated discussion. I'm prepared, and I want to, I'm not doing this. I want to protect the citizens. I want to protect our staff. I want to we have concerns. We are not a residential town. We are, we are a residential town. We don't have a commercial core. It's important that our sewers, our septics, and our wells are all taken care of. We're in a drought. There's water restrictions everywhere, and we have nothing but the wells that we have. And it's important that we review everything so that we can come up with policy.
One more thing, I'm not averse to if people purchase their property prior to this moratorium going into effect, to having the discussion of enabling them to obtain a license. And maybe that's a discussion we can have. If they were closed prior to the 26th of May, that's the date. So, I mean, I'm not, we didn't do this to try and punish anyone. We did this to try and make this program run effectively, pay for itself, and not mess up what we have as far as how this place is.
I believe it'll be on the agenda, and we will probably have certain things to talk about, and all of those will be in the agenda going forward.
You know, I'll reiterate, I don't disagree that all of these are things we need to work on. We've been talking about this since you and I have been trustees, Joe. This is nothing new. We didn't need a moratorium, let alone an emergency moratorium, to do any of this. In my opinion, it created a lot of unintended consequences. This should have been made a priority way back when we had our first manager, not when you did your study, which I don't mind that study. I like the fact that you did it. But it shouldn't all of a sudden become an emergency because you had a concern and went to the town and said, I don't know whose idea it was to do a moratorium, let alone an emergency moratorium. So, and I didn't know when we were in that meeting about the difference between an emergency moratorium and a moratorium. I think I said, what's the difference? I think we joked that it was something, one requires a super vote and one doesn't. And now I do know, now that I've stuck my foot in this muck. We don't need all this. We didn't have to create this issue.
Can I address the issue of emergency? Because I think we're getting hung up on that word.
I don't know. Sure.
Yeah. That's an unfortunate word used for now 50 years in Colorado as a substitute for a phrase that says an ordinance necessary for the immediate preservation of health, safety, and welfare. Instead of using all those words, for 50 years municipalities have used the word emergency. It's unfortunate they use that. The number one reason why municipalities impose moratorium by emergency is because the number one reason for that is because you want to prohibit or stop temporarily a rush on licenses and permits. It's the number one reason for all sorts of different land uses, so that people aren't trying to beat the ordinance, because a regular ordinance isn't effective for 30 days. An emergency, unfortunate term, ordinance is effective immediately. And what it does is it keeps people from rushing in and getting their license and trying to beat the regulations that may be put in place through the process. And that's the number one reason municipalities use moratorium, use an emergency ordinance to do it.
Well, you're talking,
I put it on
an emergency,
yeah.
And you're saying licenses. Emergency moratoriums are for lots of things.
They are.
And a regular moratorium, so people know, goes through the legislative process where there's public comment. We didn't do that. And so
they both go through the same degree.
No, they don't.
Yeah, we have to publish the same notice, which is by state law none.
But a regular moratorium, practically, tell me if I'm wrong, has to go through the legislative process where we have, it's posted, we have it, it's on the agenda, we discuss it, it means there's opportunity for citizens to comment on it, and then it's voted on at a later meeting.
No.
Well,
not the process for a statutory town. In the past, the town has used a two-step process. And we have used a two-step process on more important things, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, give an introduction, because the board members were complaining that we get an ordinance on the same night as approval. They wanted more time to review it. So what we started doing was sending out early, which we did for this moratorium. So we sent it out early to the board members so you get a chance to read it and ask questions. Nobody asked me a single question about it. I take full responsibility for putting it on as an emergency ordinance and as a moratorium, because that's the common practice to address these kinds of issues in the state of Colorado. I have been with you for 9 years. The number one issue that I've heard over those years have been STR, short-term rentals, and the problems that it would have. We have an ordinance that needs to be overhauled in a variety of different ways. One problem is enforcement, because we don't have the staff and we aren't taking the efforts to go out there and do what the ordinance says. The ordinance effectuates policy. So if you have a vision, you can draft regulations to make that vision happen. Then you have to enforce to make sure that it's consistent. The problem that I've seen in 9 years in the town is the town boards never sat down and talked about the policy of short-term rentals. That is, what do you want to do with them? How do you want them to influence your character of the community? Are they part of your mission statement? And is there some risk that's associated with them of taking over the land uses in the community? It's a big policy issue. It's not tweaking the ordinance a little bit to change some words. You all need, and I'm stepping out here because I feel strongly about this, you all need to sit down and talk about the policy, because you're getting pressure on SGRs, short-term rental license requests, because of what your surrounding communities are doing. They're cutting off, it's like a balloon in land use. If your other communities are pressing on the balloon and not allowing it to expand, it's going to expand somewhere else. It's going to expand wherever it's allowed to. Blue River allows unlimited number of SGRs. In other words, you could have 100% of your entire community short term. That's what your ordinance allows. Because you never talked about the policy of, is that wise? Is that what we want to happen? Now, 4 years ago, you didn't get as much pressure with SGRs because you weren't seeing the restrictions in the surrounding communities. But now you're getting them. And honestly, you have to change anything. I think you have to talk about it. You have to ask yourselves, does this ordinance meet our policy, our vision for the community? And if you say, yes, we're fine with as many as want to come here, that's great. No problem with that. But you have to ask that question. That's what's missing.
Well, I think it's just an issue of us not doing our job. There's still nothing that's an emergency about it. And what are the steps we can do to repeal it or at least have a vote about it?
Because it's an ordinance and it was legislative, it was approved by the process that a regular ordinance would be approved by. The only difference is an emergency ordinance requires a supermajority vote and becomes effective immediately. Other than that, everything's the same. You would have to put on the next agenda, unless you want to hold a special meeting, another ordinance to repeal that ordinance that was passed by a unanimous vote of 6 people. Supermajority was required was 6. All 6 people voted yes.
That's because I wasn't here to
Because
be
you
the
weren't here.
voice of reason. And
Well,
you don't
that's
do
not
that,
true.
and that's why she tried to pass it during that meeting. That's it's complete bullshit.
Just telling you that that's what we want. Well, that's what the board wants to do.
So if they re-vote, 3 people are already swayed, then what happens?
Well,
Would you pass another emergency to repeal it?
You know, these things that you're bringing up about revisiting our policies on short-term rentals, and we really need to look at our mission statement. Those are your issues. That wasn't discussed. That the only thing that was told to me by you in that meeting and by Jody was she did her study and we needed a better monitoring system. And you've been on this board longer than I have. These are not new subjects. It's been discussed. The can keeps getting kicked down the road. I think we need rules. I'm a person that believes short-term rentals, long-term rentals, no rentals can live in harmony. But the way this was done, I felt manipulated in how this happened. Because all I was led to believe was that it was only about the monitoring system. And now I see there's 4 bullet points. And what you put on there, because that's what you want. I know how you feel about short-term rentals, is that we should do this. What that moratorium did is it lit a fire under all these people, myself included. Well, let's get it done. But the consequences affected our constituents. And I don't think it was necessary to do a moratorium, any moratorium. We could have done this without a moratorium. You agree?
I feel that everyone received the same, if anybody had questions about where it says section 5 staff direction, it would have been brought up. I should assume everyone comes prepared and reads everything. And
I read it, Jody. I read it 6 times after that and picked up on something different every time. It's not an easy, when you have an ordinance with a bunch of legal language in front of you, it's not always clear. The first I looked at it one time, I read it. And I was basing my decision on what you were telling me in our phone conversation, because Bob told you, if you want to do this, you need to call the people and let them know what's coming. And I appreciated that. But normally we have conversations about this. We don't just have this document show up at the meeting, a little discussion, a phone call previous, and then we're asked to vote on something that's a pretty big deal.
was everyone shocked by the moratorium and what was in it and what we were voting on?
I was. other,
I mean,
I don't know, I'm the only person that didn't get calls and everybody else got calls to explain and talk about it, so I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
Everyone knew I was out of the country. All you had to do was message me to look it up. I said it at the last meeting. So all the problem is here is the process. I'm not fighting the rules. I think we need rules and we need to enforce them 100%. It also comes down to what other people said. There is 5 to 10% of the rentals that are the problem. We have rules in effect to get rid of them. People need to step up and do their job as citizens too and complain. And that's not going to happen half the time. We're always going to fight that battle. But what happened here is completely wrong. And maybe I'm one of the few people that believes in right and wrong, but it needs to get reversed. And then we need to do our job and enforce the rules and hire a person. We're still in the shadow of Michelle Eddy and the bad things she did to our town, but she is gone now. It's time to make the change and do our jobs.
So I'll bring up one thing from John, and I agree with you, the way that we went about this and the way it was presented, I'm not faulting you at all, right? When we looked at this, we were in a 98% non-compliance sort of window, and we're looking at this and like, we need to do something. I worry now exactly what Bob just said, right? We're opening ourselves up. That if we repeal this immediately, we open the floodgates exactly in that manner to get as many STR licenses as possible while we try to deal with some of these issues.
Tighten up the regulations.
So I don't know that
15 the first year.
I don't know that helps us in the end, right? Did we just make this worse by saying, all right, now it's gone. We're going to discuss it for a month. Everybody who has a stake in it, talk about staff being inundated. We're going to get 150 requests because we're not sure of the future, right? I think that's absolutely possible. So compounding problems, right? I'll be the first to take an arrow for this, right? I think the way we went about it, we read it, I read it. To do our due diligence, I would say, and I'm not gonna say as a board, I'll say as me as an individual, I needed to do a better job to go through and understand exactly the repercussions of what we were doing, how it was going to affect things. If this brought anything good to light, just what Bob said, we are forced to look at the policy of short-term rentals in Blue River. What does it mean? What does it not mean? Because we've all, citizens, board, everybody, we've all just been kind of muttering along with it, right? And we watched Frisco pass it. We watched Breckenridge pass the moratorium, right? Everybody's done it. Exactly like Bob said, right? It's getting pushed to us now. And now it's in front of us and we need to deal with it. I do worry about repealing this immediately. I don't trust what happens immediately after that process. Whether it affects somebody who just closed on a property, Ted said it, there is no exclusive right to a short-term rental. It doesn't exist. It's something that's granted. So
maybe if it's not immediate, if it's uncomfortable for you, let's go back to what I had suggested, which was a 3-month.
I mean, I would like, if
this
it puts pressure on this board to sit down in the next month.
I think our intention was to get this handled as fast as possible.
Yeah, I agree.
And we put the amount of time out there in case we needed that amount of time, not so that we could use it all. I think that our intention all along has been to get it rectified as soon as possible. And it's been an issue since I've been on the board. And Joel Dixon was on the board, who's president, and Ted Pilling, rest in peace, was on the board. And we tried and tried and tried. But the previous board wouldn't even entertain it. That's where the can kicking started. I've been waiting to have this conversation eagerly for a very long time.
And I agree to it 100%.
I don't know what's involved in repeal, but I would personally not be interested in, I don't know how that works, but I think we need to address this. I mean, even in our license as it states, it says, we're on a rolling policy. So every year you have to renew your license. It's not an automatic. And it says in our regulations as of now, it's a privilege, a license. Yeah. Anyway, and
I just asked you
that's
the
being
thinking
paid.
above it.
Yeah.
One member was not
There-
allowed to instruct someone to do it.
as a privilege, a licensed to operate
But
short-term
how did this
rental.
happen? Jody instructed it.
Jody asked me if she, let's look at Jody asked me if she could put on the agenda. I said, no. It's not that's not the practice. We want a good policy. It's not the practice. But if you get an objection, if you did something like that, that objection, you can get shot down. So what you gotta do is you gotta get a majority, if not a strong majority, of board members to say they would support it, so that when we get in the session, gets rolled out, you're not gonna be facing with a majority of the board said it should never come before us. Which is what happened. You got 6 people saying it should come before us, and you all voted. That's what I told her. I did not say that she could put it on by herself.
This is the short-term rental ordinance that you guys passed. I wasn't on the board then, but all of you guys were on the board then. And this is from November. And it does say, as a privilege, a license to operate a short-term rental shall not establish the right to such activity or a right to continue the activity beyond the term of any license, subject to compliance with all applicable regulations. Owners should not rely on the future availability of the short-term rental program or on the potential for future license renewals. The town may alter, modify, suspend, or revoke the availability of the short-term rental licensing program. That's the very first paragraph that you guys passed in November.
Also, wasn't there.
We're on the board.
I know, but I have
Okay.
things that I do.
And
Life, I live my life, and I love my life here, and that's part of it.
And, you know, further in that ordinance, it says that change of property ownership. So this addresses the items, the properties that are listed for sale. It says change of property ownership. Any change of ownership for which a short-term rental license was issued and is effective will automatically void the license. So as soon as the property is sold, there is no short-term rental license. None.
We're not to do.
And so it says that you cannot attempt to transfer a license. It's unlawful to do that. You cannot assign, sell, convey, grant, or transfer. So having short-term rentals in place beyond the sale of your property and that change of ownership would be unlawful. Because you have to.
Is this subject to discussion of board members?
You have to potentially apply for a new license, which may be denied for many reasons. And it says within here that it can take up to 45 days to even get to that and have it processed. So that's all I see in there. I don't see that the moratorium affected, it did not impact any existing rentals at all. It states that you do not have a right to the rental and that it's voided at the time of sale, which makes me see that it's not necessarily impacting those either, because you cannot guarantee that they can rent the property beyond that date.
Heather, I don't disagree with the stuff that's in there.
I read that. It's the first time I've read it.
Okay. But what I do disagree with did we need a moratorium? This is not a new conversation. We should have put more of a priority, beat on this, other people beat on this every time it comes up. And all I thought this moratorium was about, I read it, but I didn't read it in detail. All I thought it was about, Jody, was what you told me on the phone, was getting a system in place to monitor our short-term rentals. I didn't know we were going to be revisiting, as part of the moratorium, our mission statement, restrictions on the number of licenses. I didn't.
It's not, it wasn't.
It doesn't say we have to discuss that, does it?
I gave you my thoughts on that issue. It's not, those thoughts were not what drove the ordinance. I'm giving those thoughts to you because I've sat here for 9 years and I've watched y'all get frustrated with this issue. I gave you those thoughts for that. That's when we passed the moratorium ordinance. I told you the reasons why it made sense to do it. And it wasn't about talking about policy, although I felt strongly you need to open that door. That's for you guys to decide. That's your number one job in the municipality, is to decide policy. Number one is figure out what the future of the community should be. But I gave you those comments tonight, not because they were justifying the moratoriums, because that's how I strongly feel.
I get that, Bob. But I think rather than putting the burden of this, what we should have been doing already, like John said, I think we're putting the burden of our indecision in the past onto the community, which I don't think is fair. A moratorium is pretty heavy. I think where the emphasis that you should have put was on us, that you guys need to get your act together. Revisit, make some decisions, get your rules, which we have a good set of rules. Get someone I'd love to find out what happened to our code enforcement ambassador, which we all worked on that very hard and hired one, and then all of a sudden the person just was gone. We didn't discuss that.
He opposed Michelle, she fired him.
He was just gone. So all these things I agree with. The burden of getting this stuff done should be on us, not on the community with this moratorium. I don't disagree with anything that anybody says. Your concerns, how that's written. I disagree with this moratorium and how it was put into place. And I certainly don't think it needs to be for 6 months. I realize that it has a time limit, that it runs out December 31st automatically, but that does affect people if we want to take it that far, as renewing licenses.
Can I speak to the term?
Yeah.
The reason why we do a 6-month term on most moratoriums is because we say 3 months and we go 3 months and one week, we got to do another ordinance to extend it. It's just a pain in the rear end. So we, as a practice, Colorado municipalities do a 6-month term for most things so that we have plenty of time. We don't have to keep coming back and extend it. So that this people off. This is, you don't do that. People work done as quickly as you can. You have 6 months if you need it. Rarely do you need it. That's why it's a 6 month.
All right.
You're right. This is on us, and that's why the moratorium was put into place, so we move forward as far as I understand. I don't know, I haven't been here. And it is on the agenda tonight to work on the software and go on from there, and that's what we're working on.
Okay, well, I don't think the moratorium was for us to hurry up. It was put on the community. A lot of people try to make decisions. This is our busy selling season, and I realize, I think short-term rentals, the spirit of a short-term rental is a second homeowner who loves the mountains like we all do. We live here full time, and they use their call it a privilege, call it a right. I really don't care. It's like short-term rentals are used to offset those costs to justify the purchase, but most people do follow the rules. Most people are in compliance. However, Jody's study showed that only 1 out of 10 people was in compliance. I don't know what the non-compliance issues were, and if you didn't have short license, that is concerning to me. But that's not the ordinance. This moratorium is not going to do anything. We need a program to monitor the internet, and we need people to enforce it. And that enforcement has been a long time issue. I don't know if Larry brought it up, but we don't enforce our ordinances. We got lots of them, but we don't enforce them. Let's give that a chance, because I'm not in disagreement. And I don't know, we haven't ever given our rules a chance with enforcement and a monitoring system. Now all of a sudden we want to talk about limiting the number of licenses. It's a knee-jerk reaction. I don't know why we have to go down that road.
There's a lot of things that we need to handle. I believe it's gonna be on the agenda to talk. I'm sure we'll have certain points to go over, and then the next meeting I have other points so that we can get the policy in order just a second. So I'd like to, we're kind of saying the same thing, and we have a lot on our agenda. So I don't know how we move forward, but I'd like to move forward with the rest of the agenda.
Well, it doesn't sound like I'm gonna get a repeal, but a majority on that, and it doesn't sound like it's realistic, but I would like this board to commit to getting this done in the next 2 or 3 months, not dragging it out 6 months. And that was my concern when I talked to you.
Understood. I mean, I think the commitment
Never
from all
wanted
of
it
us
to last 6
as soon as
months.
possible. It could not. It
I know
may
that
happen in 3 months or it may.
I know
If you want me to help, talk to you about my land use experience, okay? If you want me to help guide you as to the issues so you can knock them off, I have a whole matrix of all short-term rental issues that municipalities look at when they think about regulating. We can go one at a time. You can say, kill it, kill it, kill it, kill it. Let's do something on that one, kill this. You can go through quickly. And you can get it done in 3 months, but you're gonna have to have some leadership on it. And I'm gonna say I have probably more experience than most on short-term rental regulation in the state. Okay? And I'm helping you guide if that's what
anything to expedite this process would be appreciated, because we all want to get a good system in place. Yeah, I do anyway, and I don't want to drag this out.
Would you be willing to have special meetings?
Absolutely.
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah.
I have something for the process. As I mentioned to Chad, this is involving this whole issue. I've requested 5 items in the last 5 months to be on the agenda to be discussed. They have never made it there. And I've repeated them 2 or 3 times, some of them. In addition, a problem, which is why we got rid of Michelle Eddy, is that she was exercising feelings and opinions as staff. To my knowledge, staff should not be exercising feelings and opinions. It should be as we're directed and offer neutral opinions on. So we should make sure that's also only how we proceed.
May I ask? So one member of the body or the board can put something on the agenda? Is that
Or in discussion or new business. Or discuss if they want to vote on it and explain their side. They should be able to, because we need to know how.
Most communities, we have other matters that may come before the body at the end of the agenda, and somebody was, I want to talk about this, and if you get a majority vote, you might put it on the next agenda. That's common.
Well, we need to know that process and make it.
It's not written policy. It's a policy. And I'm happy to draft that.
I think we could use some guidance on that as well, Bob, where when someone does have something good they want to put on the agenda, how is it done? Who do they talk to? Is it in writing? Is it verbally? And then what is required of the other trustees? How does the town manager make decisions that it goes on the agenda? I would like to have a clear process for that, because right now I don't think any of us really understand that.
We can talk about it. It's a very easy issue, and I'll give you examples used elsewhere.
And then why is John's 5 times of trying and Jody's 1 time gets on there? And it's nothing against you, Jody. It's just I've asked for things to be on the agenda too before, and I never see it again. So we need a better process. Okay.
So we put on that next agenda and knock it off.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree.
Any more comment? Then we'll just move on to new business, resolution number 2026-08. This is approving the information technology platform.
This is hot off the press. It's I received the intent of this IT agreement is to retain the same security services the town already has, with the sole exception that we move to a cloud-based platform rather than our existing secondary desktop, which we have an incidence rate of about 10 to 15% of it not working or looking at working at such a limited capacity that it's almost non-functional. So it's been something that I've wanted to tackle for a few months, and this allows us to have the cost of transferring those platforms, and it will streamline and eliminate the use of a second desktop on the town servers, of the town computers, which is, I think, a win-win in my opinion. And the cost of migration is approximately $11,000 to $12,000 to move it to a cloud-based system instead of our second server that we currently use and have problems with. And our IT provider is also attempting to get other municipalities in the region away from that existing service as well, due to issues with other towns in the region. So this is an opportunity to over the remainder of 2026 to allow for that transition to occur. And all the other items are already existing items that we have within that. It's fortuitous time. It's good timing because the previous contract's already set to expire. So this was the time to pursue this change and make this provision. And it'll allow us to be able to access files from our local desktop rather than having to use a third-party software that intermittently works.
So, I don't know, how does being cloud-based impact? Because often our internet goes out and you don't have access. I went to go into the Civic Plus or whatever that system is, and it's offline.
Yeah.
How does being cloud-based rather than having that in?
The second server use is already an online system, so it is already dependent on internet access and requires substantially more internet bandwidth than a cloud-based platform would. So it will hopefully reduce this latency issues and getting kicked from the platform, only able to have 3 or 4 documents or Excel worksheets open at a given time, or else the system may crash. Things of that nature that will hopefully make our process easier on the town side to do our work at.
And with that, I mean, we haven't come to this yet, but the new short-term rental monitoring software or something, does that go through this same cloud system, or is that something different?
It would be an online internet platform login. It could be done locally or through if we kept our current system, it could be done locally or through the Citrix platform that we use currently. The cloud-based system is to allow us to eliminate that redundancy and redundant system and to in conjunction, it doesn't really impact one or the other. They operate with
Any other questions? I think we need a motion to approve, correct?
That's correct.
Make a motion to approve resolution number 2026-08, approving an information technology and platform modification contract between the town and Verticom Technologies to help our server work beta.
Wait a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The next one is to authorize manager's action.
Yeah, this is for a purchase of a third police vehicle to round out our fleet that we've had in the past. I'm sure you all are familiar with the incident which occurred about 2 months ago now, a little under 2 months, where our third vehicle in operation for police services was totaled. And in doing so, it requires overlap of use of existing police vehicles in a manner that is not suitable for town operations. And this opportunity, I have an offer sheet in the board packet below the resolution, which would allow us to utilize existing radar and other equipment that was taken out of the total police vehicle and integrate that into a new police vehicle rather than having new parts and new vehicle and paying for both of those. It has the significant cost savings, and this would allow us to move forward with the purchase on a cash basis. Is there anything, David, that you'd like to?
No, I believe the new vehicle that we want to pursue is like 44,000. That's because body model year is similar to the one that all this equipment came out of, so we'll hopefully transfer. The other option is a 2026 vehicle, which is coming in about 68,000. So that's significant, like $24,000 that would be saving by recycling the equipment we already have. And I'm not sure what the insurance claims.
Yeah, that's still sorted out.
Something else too.
It's a parallel process.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's my understanding that the vehicle is $62,395. We're saving on this, and we're saving $17,385 by putting the cage from the old vehicle, et cetera, over, and that's what brings the cost down to $44,000. We're still getting a 2026 vehicle.
We're getting a 25. There's a new 25 because the model changes from 25 to 26. So the original car was a 24. The 25 is similar. And that allows us to transfer equipment.
Okay. Chief, is there any reason you advocate for one or the other? Is there any reason not to go with a less expensive vehicle?
We want to go with the less
That's your
expensive.
preference too?
Yes, we want to go because that's the quickest way we can get a vehicle back on the road. There's one waiting for our approval, and go ahead.
And we're saving roughly $25,000 for that.
Correct, and there is also substantial lead time possible if we went with the other option in order to get that fitted and to get our order through and with that system. So this is hopefully both a cost and time saving.
We still have a possibility of insurance reimbursement.
Correct. We will get reimbursed with insurance. It's just the playing out of the haggling process right now.
So this is just a gap, and we're going to be reimbursed for this.
I believe so. I mean,
yeah,
the numbers I'm seeing right now are actually very close.
Yes.
Okay.
I couldn't quote you on specific numbers, but it is fairly close a number.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize the manager to action to purchase the replacement vehicle. And or hopefully we will get reimbursed. Should yield a
I'll second
net low to zero.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next is resolution 2026-09, the short-term rental compliance and enforcement software.
Yes, and this is a quote that I put in front of you. I mean, as hot off the press as literally possible, received it at 3:00 today. So, I have admittedly, I've not had the time and opportunity to pore over the document as complete of detail as I would like to. I mean, we have been moving at breakneck speed. It's basically, I've been told by this platform, it's unprecedented to move as fast as we have on trying to obtain the software relative to the quote that has been provided. They have two options for this quote, one of which is specifically just the platform, which is monitoring compliance. And this is basically what is, I would like to call a little bit more of a white glove service, which has basically it has all of the experience that the company has on their end of implementation and making the templates and doing the enforcement and the hotline and all of these things. So it will greatly reduce the staffing need in the short term, and I believe is the optimal solution in order for us to move forward with speed and with the knowledge that staffing is not at the level necessary to conduct the work as we desire it to be done. However, this is a discrepancy in fees, and the quote for the platform that I am bringing forward to you guys is about $105,000 a year. This is an item that I have double checked the budget and confirmed that it is a suitable item to be covered with the intent that short-term rental funds are used for this sort of monitoring and enforcement method. So that is why I proposed this methodology versus I've received about 4 different sort of models, 3 of which are the software and 1 of which includes the additional assistance from this third-party platform for all of the enforcement-related mechanisms, tax compliance, auditing, things of that nature that otherwise the town staff would be entirely dependent on doing, and is not really it's at this given moment, with the expediency of the moratorium and the intent behind it, I do not feel it prudent to recommend the other courses of action.
Is this the software, Chad, that's constantly updated, this program?
Right.
As opposed to just becoming obsolete, they constantly are updating it?
Correct. As I understand it,
we're spending $105,000 a year.
Correct. As I understand it, there are monthly updates.
And do you know, is this the one that the town of Breckenridge is using?
That is correct. And that was not used in the intent of why this one was discussed and recommended to the board. I did have discussions of 2 other predominant compliance systems that are used in the public sector sphere for compliance and enforcement efforts, but this, I believe, best suits the needs of the town, and I've received the best input and feedback from my conversations with other relevant communities in the area, as well as a broader discussion.
So I'm always a big believer in getting into something and talking to people who already use it. That's why I asked if it's Breckenridge's system.
Correct.
And did you speak to Breckenridge about this and do they give it a thumbs up? Do they like it?
I've talked about it at length with their STR compliance manager, and they had nothing but positives to speak of this platform.
Is this a system that our current staff would just be in addition to what, or does this need another person to oversee this, like you talked about with TLB?
That would certainly be it. As I understand it, it will require a bit more staff work. However, that may be offset by this time savings from having such a streamlined platform. That the town is basically having to do all this manual verification and research. Hopefully that basically offsets that other requirement. So it almost is a wash. However, that doesn't deny the need for enforcement and
No,
and other-
that's another
but
piece.
yes, correct. So that's independent. That is something that will need to be discussed both as a boots on the ground and an administrative capacity.
So we skirted around how we, a while ago, were really in favor of having a code enforcement officer. And one of the things I had heard is there wasn't enough for that person to do. Is this also something that they could be taught to use and put that on their
Yes,
plate?
that is correct.
If we decide to go down the road of getting a code enforcement.
That is correct. And I would also note that this comprehensive platform is not something that we are set in stone about. We can always, if the town decides that we are in a place that it is appropriate to do so, reduce it back to the monitoring and compliance software alone and have increased staff capacity on our end to do that compliance and enforcement mechanism. I am recommending this due to our current situation and the time constraints that are inherent in this process.
And they have people on staff that will help us get this implemented.
Correct.
Hooked up and.
I will note that the implementation timeline, which they were not the longest implementation timeline, is 3 months after signing the contract before this platform would come online and suitable for use, due to the need for data migration and verification, things of that nature. This was far from the longest timeline that was quoted. It was quoted for almost up to a year, and from other platforms.
It could take up to a year.
Not Numo. 3 months. They estimated a 3 month timeline for turnaround. Once we are given the all clear and we can move forward on the process, and they start the implementation process, but there were options that were also explored that had a longer timeline of implementation.
So does this, I mean, I see the 682
Yes.
active listings. Is that because it's searching multiple platforms, so it's duplicates that it's
Correct.
kicking up?
That is that is the total scope that they, in their scrape, they initially did in town limits. There are 682 listings. They estimate, once again, this is an estimate because they would need to do far more work to get an accurate, reliable quote that we can put our hat on and say, this is what makes sense. But their first goal is 409 unique short-term rentals in town.
And we think there's 210?
And we have a licensed 210.
I was gonna say, we don't
And
We don't even have that many houses.
Yeah,
That's
Yeah, we
facts.
do.
Yeah, we do. No idea.
763, or what is the number?
However,
It's a little higher than that.
I am curious to see what this further implementation will provide, because I got 3 very different
And they know where the
STR. Correct. They have state file to do it. That's what's so complicated about this process, is because there are admittedly, one platform estimated that there are several thousand different listing sites that can be used for short-term rental platforms. Obviously, that is not something that can be done with manual verification outside of the software by town staff, just due to the fact of what would you be searching for. That's a bit of a needle in a haystack scenario.
So this would only be for online compliance. I just haven't had a chance to really look
Of
at
course.
it. 24/7. I mean, I'm trying to understand it, but that's not gonna help with licensing and going through that paperwork, correct? That is just
They do all of, in this suggested model, they do all of the renewal paperwork.
Okay.
And this looks
So this
for
is
some of those.
This is basically a
You just hand it
95% handoff. The town does require some work to be done on that end. However, I mean, I can't guarantee that to be the
Yeah.
nature of things, but that is how it's been couched, yes.
And this addresses some of the compliance issues because the software verifies that, yes, the license number is in there. And
Correct.
it says you can only have 5 cars or whatever.
Yes, you can include keywords and exact phrases that it scrapes for, and it says this is not in compliance. Or they will take all of the relevant ordinances, fold that into a model that they use for verification. Outside of for example, they can't say this existing license number needs to be on this license, but they can say there is not a business license on this platform listing. Yes.
So I'm gonna assume that 409 is probably right. So if somebody doesn't have their license on there and they're on VRBO, Airbnb, and Booking.com, it's gonna show up 3 times. So that number could be 3 of the same.
Correct. 6. Yes, there are those associated challenges if they are fully in compliance on one and not on the other as well. That may provide unique results.
Yeah.
However, this also, it does not cover potentially the small fragment of long-term renters that may use Airbnb or Vrbo for stays of longer than 30 days or relevant platforms. So this will obviously need to be refined. An appropriate number is not easily accessible right now. That is a useful baseline and information indicator to consider, but it is not the end-all be-all.
Chad, you brought up the budget.
Correct.
I don't, do you have on the top of your mind how much we annually get from short-term rentals in the budget? What are
That is a hard thing to exactly state because this is the first year we've changed the licensing model and fees associated with it. However, I can confidently say the town is missing out on a substantial percentage of revenue associated with lodging tax remittance. We don't have a good system. We have a system. It is not a good system to its independent and say, hey, these are the number of days that a listing was occupied during a given lodging tax remittance period. And this would allow us to close that gap to a large extent and provide accurate data to this is the rough estimate to what it should be provided. This is not, once again, because people may block their schedule off for other reasons and there are extenuating circumstances, but it provides at a much better degree than manual verification what the lodging tax should be.
So our goal will be to have short-term rental income that the town gets pay for all these upgrades.
Correct.
And the system to monitor and even a code enforcement officer.
Correct.
That's our
And this
goal,
is
right?
this is intended for the money that is sent here is utilized to optimize the operations of short-term rental licensing provisions and things of that nature, enforcement, management, monitoring. All of those items, it can be used in a sweeping context, but that is the intent of the license fees and the lodging tax fund.
Will this program help keep track of the lodging tax and the income off of these better than the
To a much better degree than our existing system, yes. To a much better degree. We have Citizen Serve, our existing platform is not optimized to do so. Another existing challenge we have is that we have to do manual outreach to every single person. And there's not those existing things of this will in large part cut out that manual requirement. We could set templates to, we have 6 weeks out. Your renewal, for example, if we set a 10-week window for renewal, it's 10 weeks out, time for your renewal. It's 8 weeks out, you still haven't renewed, it's time for your renewal, and so on and so forth. So we can reduce that crush against the window and reduce against the timeline ending and the staff being slammed by a large amount of information in a very compressed time frame. And I'm confident that the software will improve our ability to understand and conduct tax remittance, as well as this unique existing problem that Airbnb and Vrbo do not directly remit to the town because we share an existing zip code with Breckenridge and a post office. So that has been one of the most challenging items with our existing system as well. And this will help to serve to inform residents and at least serve to reduce that dissonance between what is being provided to residents by Airbnb and Vrbo, because the vast majority of instances, the tax is remitted directly by Airbnb and Vrbo. However, in our circumstance, that is not a possibility.
So how does this impact the actual short-term rental owner? Will they need to create some sort of account or something to interact with this?
That is correct. We will migrate as much data as physically possible, but my intent is to have the tax remittance and licensure and all of the enforcement and monitoring things, that component in Citizen Serve is moved to this platform. That I believe it would cause more staff difficulty than assistance to have two separate platforms to have to monitor and verify. We need one exact source or repository of information regarding short-term rentals that will serve to not say, hey, I need to cross-reference A with B and B with C and C with D.
So with the
I do not have that exact information off the top of my head.
So with licensing, if we have different rules that need to be, given at the time of, so you just tell them that information and then they can collect that?
Correct.
And
Every single town has a custom model created for it, which includes all of the data and legislation that is passed by that given town. So no two portals, they may look visually similar, but they operate separately. They have slight differences between every single one of them depending on what the legislation is in place.
Any other questions? I would move to make a motion to approve.
is the 105 prorated, or is it, or that we pay it regardless of the?
That's one of our existing things we are working through because that is May to May or June to June circumstance. So there may be some smaller items to iron out on the back end related to.
Seems like this is a great idea, but it's slightly rushed like everything else we've been doing, so.
And I asked the motion to be adjusted to, I just got this, my copy was actually hot. And I haven't changed to remove this, it's from Virginia, so it's missing some Colorado stuff, and we can work with them to get it changed. The motion could be approved by the town attorney. That'd be great.
Final numbers and final accounting detail and those are in July for us.
Whatever circumstances indicated by the board, I'm okay with this.
It takes 3 months to get this thing going.
I know, but we don't want to rush $105,000 either.
Well, and find out that it's 250 or something rather than.
I mean, we just got, I would love an opportunity to have a little bit more.
5 pages.
I haven't even read that.
So
Trust me, if there was any chance to have had it at an earlier date, I would have done so. This was as quickly as I could push them to move this.
John, I appreciate you jumping on this.
Yeah.
What we all hope. Is it possible to have a special meeting in 2 weeks instead of waiting 4 weeks to get our ducks in a row and Bob reviews it? I better numbers.
I don't have issues with it as long as it's not the same day as the PNC meeting. That would be the only.
Oh, it's scheduled in June.
Yeah.
How would people feel about that?
I'm good with it.
I'm good.
You got time, Bob? Yeah, a motion would be, I move to postpone this to the next earliest agenda. Chad can work on when that might be.
So I move to postpone this to next earliest agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Any opposed? So good. Next is ordinance 2026-05. This is an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of Blue River amending the transition zone district to set minimum lot size, minimum lot width, and amending setbacks. It looks like we have a public hearing.
Can I just introduce
Yeah.
real quick?
Yes, please.
The board previously had this before them and talked at length about some of the numbers that were in it and set a 4-acre minimum lot size with a 100-foot minimum frontage, street frontage, which matches the R1 zone district. P&Z talked at great length about this ordinance and approved it. They changed some of the, recommended changing some of the numbers. They were okay with the 4 acres. They would like to take the 100-foot street frontage, since it's a 4-acre lot, and make it 250 feet on the street, not 100. They felt that proportion would be better given lot size of 4 acres. They also wanted to go to a 75-foot minimum front setback instead of 25. They wanted to go to 50 minimum back side yard setbacks. And the rear setback would also be 75, so 75, 75, 50, 50 around the building. And a building height of a total of 30 feet. It was 30 feet. Same as the Arlen Zone District.
So this is the typo?
I don't support any of the setback changes or the minimum height change. 35 feet is fine. It's the way it's been. There's no need to change it.
35.
Do we need to open this up?
We will, once you all
once we
talk about
okay.
what the numbers should be for you, so the public knows what.
Gotcha. Okay.
I think it's an individual lot, base basis. I think putting something like this on the stage is it's not great. Yeah.
kind of like, do like a mining club. Just give me long
Yeah.
setbacks.
I do understand you want to go back to the original numbers, which were 100, 25, 25, and
Yeah.
15, 15 to 35 height.
Yeah, and I don't support the full 4 acres. I think we should stick to the 2 that we talked about before.
Any other comment?
I'm okay with P and Z's recommendations. They went through, looked at it, I think it's a 4 acre lot, and it has different rules and restrictions, but I don't have an issue with P and Z's recommendations at all.
Were you at the meeting with P and Z?
Yes.
Was there, how much time did they spend on this
A
approximately?
fair amount, for P and Z, a fair amount of time.
I'd wager 40 minutes, 45 minutes at bare minimum.
It's hard to visualize what that means. You know, I'm kind of look at pictures and see an example of something, like a 20-acre parcel. It could all be developed. What would that look like with these? So it's very hard for me to make a call on this. I guess I have to rely, I mean, Bob, you've got a lot of more land use experience than I do, and I have to, like Ben said, I have to give, P&Z has to deal with this a lot more than we do. They've reviewed it and they think this is reasonable.
Why
The ultimate decision is yours. And
I
there's
get
nothing
it.
urgent about this particular ordinance or the next one, and they need to stay lockstep. So you could postpone till the July meeting, right, to give you time to think about it.
You know the struggles I have, Bob. You know, I'm a visual person. I don't. Do you have any recommend how to make a judgment? I mean, I guess I could go home and I could draw an out and make my own measurements, which I'll do. And give it a little more time.
They have a pretty good handle on talking about what the proportions of a lot would be at 4 acres, what varying proportions would be. But I think that's something you all need to look at. You all need to think about. So I'm kind of leaning towards postponing it.
I think the key is what parcels are left that could actually be affected by this. And the fact that 80% of them are governed by wetlands and where they could be, and we should actually impose a rule saying that you cannot develop wetlands, and that should affect the size of the lot, not the actual size of the lot.
As a public hearing, would they open it to public comment or?
Yeah.
Let me just make sure, is there any other comments or questions from the board?
Well, I agree with John. I've always been, because it does appear that these larger parcels, which John, I don't know if you were at the meeting, but I brought a map and I actually highlighted those big parcels, which are predominant, are mostly the evolved and Brownell Baileys. And I would agree with you based on my just observations living here, there are a lot of wetlands, and it would seem reasonable to say you can't build in those wetlands.
You need to
So
protect
then what are you left with?
That's why I'm worried about those setbacks.
That's why I
being
would
at
like to
50
take an opportunity.
feet or 75 feet.
I'm not a wetlands engineer, but you'll kind of look for where do the willows end and start, and then start making them. Go ahead.
Can I suggest that you do open it up to public hearing now, because Mr. Cleary was authorized by the P and Z to speak to you.
Oh, okay.
So you may want to hear his.
I'll visually say that if it's 250 feet frontage, it would approximately be 697 feet in depth on the sides. If it was 250, 697 on a 4 acre minimum.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing.
Yeah.
Dan Cleary. So I'm going to make 2 public comments. The first is going to be as P and Z. Okay, so the discussion really was, where are these things? Like, there's only a handful of transitional district parcels, and there's only probably 2 owners that possess them. So we were fixated on, like, you guys came to us with 4 acre, and so we were talking about setbacks. And it was like, why would we stick to side setback and front setback of what most of the town is, let's say, 0.7 acre, like on average. And those setbacks seem very limited, and I envision Spruce Valley Ranch, which has different size parcels, but a A lot of them are 4 or 5, some are larger. And so if you look at that, and they're not all identical, but the width is fairly wide. And the setbacks are what you see in front of you, 75 and 50. So that was kind of the gist of it, right? If you have questions for P&Z, I'll do the best I can, you know? But that's kind of the discussion, and that's how it evolved to here. We got it and we said, the board likes 4 acres. You know, we didn't really understand, you know, what the board's goal is, because, you know, sitting out here in as a public, we haven't heard a lot of discussion about this until now. And maybe some of that's taken place in executive session. I have no idea, nor does it matter. But we didn't understand the board's goal, right? So we said, okay, if they want 4 acre, 100, you know, that width of lot, it's crazy deep. It's like a mining claim on steroids, right? That's, you look at like Red Cliff, they have like 100-foot wide lots that are, you know, or less, actually much less, and they're deep. That doesn't fit these lots of 4 acre. So I'll take any questions for and do my best as a member of P&Z.
Well, that's where my concern comes in, is there are these wetlands here. So as you put these setbacks out that much further from the sides, does that put them into the wetlands? What if the good spot to build is in that 75-foot setback and the rest of it is wetlands? So that's where I'm wondering, why not? Yeah, but we don't want every 4 acre lot to have to come get a variance.
Well, don't cut the lots full of wetlands, maybe, is one step. You know, if you're cutting the parcels, because right now envision a 10 acre parcel approximately, or an approximate 68 acre parcel. Because I think if you look at your zoning map, you're gonna find some parcels approximately that size. Okay, so, you know, they're not cut up yet. So if you cut them up, you might wanna look at how you cut them up. That'll be my answer there. I have another opinion on it, but I'm gonna give it as a public comment as a resident, so.
And, I mean, were you trying to keep the houses further apart, 150 feet apart?
Well, if you look at Spruce Valley Ranch that has large parcels,
Yeah.
that's how they do it. They want more space. You start talking about a 4 acre parcel, a property, not to, you know, convolute it, but in Frisco, like a 4/10 of an acre parcel that like abutted some wetlands over by Walter Byron Park, sold for over $3 million. So we're talking about if these lots actually become these 4 acre, because we don't know what ultimately will happen. But if we found ourselves with another Spruce Valley Ranch, well, those homes are going to be worth substantially more at 4 acre in this environment versus the metropolitan of Frisco. That's the logic there, at least for me, and that was kind of the discussion, right? You're talking about big houses on big parcels that are worth a lot of money. And so those people want privacy. Whether these lots become that, that's a whole different discussion, right? So anybody else?
To answer your question, Dan, from my what I gathered from our conversations is that the town, us, are concerned about overbuilding on lots. We want to continue to keep the character of the community and not have over density. And in this conversation, it appeared to me that probably the best model of what makes sense, and the border and these larger parcels actually border on both sides of Spruce Valley Ranch as far as a starting point. I personally think that the developer, Win Lockwood, did a very good job with Spruce Valley Ranch in laying that out. But I was thoughtful, and a lot of thought went into it. If we are able to continue this a little bit, I'm gonna probably look at what Spruce Valley Ranch's design guidelines show for minimum lot, for setbacks, front, side, back. And then they might even, I don't think they have envelopes in there, but I'm not 100%. I'm sure they address wetlands in there too. I'm pretty sure. So that would help me. But I think to answer your question, I think we were concerned about over density. Correct me if I'm wrong.
And some of that, like cherry stem, right? Like they have this little frontage and be able to develop to have these things that can get stacked next to each other.
Like the flag lot, you got a lot of acreage, but only this little piece can have homes on it.
Sure. Yeah, well that's a whole different conversation. At least because I don't, P and Z didn't really go there, but I have some opinions about that personally. And because this is a public hearing, I love to share them. But, that's a whole different.
Well, you answered the first question.
Yep, any P and Z questions?
I think it makes sense how you guys came up with it. Just logically going through it, it's this thing, you said back in the days.
Yeah, we looked at the parameters that you sort of gave us as a guide. And then we were like, well, but why? Why would you do this size lot, right? So anybody else for planning and zoning?
Ready for the public thing?
All right, so Dan Cleary, 23 Rustic Terrace. So that said, right, so this transitional district, if you look at our code, transitional is always intended to be temporary. It's like, oh, we don't know, it's transition. So a lot of that could just become, they would have to come in and apply currently for a zone district, and that zone district is R1, or as you guys approved prior, I think it was residential conservation at 10 acre. So the reality is if you sat on a large piece of land, what I don't want to see happen, what any decent, someone who's in planning, we don't want to see lots with like 100-foot setback on the front and a big pie going out into wetlands. That's not like, hey, we're going to force them into 4 acres and let's make them these crazy lots. Because I live on that crazy lot, but it's not 4 acre. But that's how it was done. When my subdivision was platted, which was the first in the town, Blue Rock Springs, we got stuck with big pieces of wetlands. So I have a 2.32 acre lot that's vacant, and I'd be shocked if it had 3/10 of dry land on it. Not good land use, not good planning. However, right, I bought it, I chose it, and I want it. But this town the board should be talking about how they want these parcels to be developed. And so really the first step would be, there's only a couple of owners that own these transitional district parcels. A good land use planner would be sitting down with applicants and saying, or potential applicants, stakeholders, if you will, what do you envision? How would you like to see this developed? See if it aligns with what you guys envision. I'll be first to say, I love this transitional district. I love the size. I love the frontage. I love the setbacks. But you're putting it on existing parcels. I got a sense from sitting in the public that the board didn't want anything to be subdivided and get too dense. And you've kind of made that mention tonight that might have been. But like, if they had decent land and they said, I got all this wetlands and I'd like to get 2 acre lots, I want to be zoned R1. I'm transitional, I'm temporary. The beauty of this is no one can come in here today and do anything. It's 16A 320. It only allows one single family on any legally recognized lot. So like, to look at this, like, first of all, if you want to do something to transitional, I think what you do to it is you touch the setbacks, and maybe we do what we just did, make them big. So you say, all right, we got a 10 acre, we got a 68 acre, and maybe we got some others. We want to keep them, make that setback and make the lot width what we're talking about tonight, and just leave it as transitional. But to have a minimum lot size, the truth is, and I see one of our potential applicants, and I don't mean to point him out, right? And I'm not advocating for him or for the other. I'm just like, this is good land use and planning. And that's what, we maybe have lacked for a long time, is like anyone who's looking at it and saying, well, what is it that we would like to see? Like, the board has vision and you could direct it. And, that's what your staff and your commissions do. So the reality is, if I was this person sitting on this land, I'd come in here as transitional and I'd say, I don't like it. I'm not doing 4 acre lots. I don't want to. I mean, you can make me. And then you're forcing maybe bad land use. But maybe they want to be PRD, planned residential development. We have it. And that's probably what most people would do. So I like the parameters of transitional, just like I liked residential conservation at 10 acre. But who's going to want to be that? So I just don't know that this accomplishes enough, but you could certainly talk about setbacks a lot with, and if you're hung up on the acreage, go for it. But the reality is it perfectly ties into the next topic, which is subdivision. And I'll make a separate comment there, but you know, these constraints are just not going to promote what you're hoping. And no one's ever going to probably come in and say, I want to be transitional. I'm going to annex into your town. They're going to have an annexation plan. And they're going to say, here's what we're hoping to do. I like this district. And I think we need more districts that are large parcel. Because up on Golden Crown, like County Road 801, if we were to entice those folks to come to Blue River, because we want large parcels as a buffer between us and Breckenridge, sure, wonderful. We have amenities. We have police that will respond to you. You know, we have a great police force. We have good staff, right? Great staff that are here. And we have a pretty small community where we can kind of deal with things. But I've exceeded my public comment time, so I apologize. But I do appreciate you guys tackling this as well as subdivision. We just worked with the parameters we were given as planning. But the reality is I don't know that this does anything. Because if you're worried about people coming in and saying, building tons of houses on 10 acres, they can't. Transitional can build one. So they're gonna have to subdivide it, which is gonna be your next topic. And then they're gonna wanna be a zone district. So I don't know. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Paul Sember, 272 Bluegrass, more or less echo what it says. The number one concern I have is protecting the natural character of the town of Blue River, and that's open space. And the more you allow people to scrape a lot, put as much density on it, and decrease the size of the setbacks on it, the more urban-like this community is turning into. So I support the idea of enlarging the setbacks in order to protect that open space character that the town has. Thank you.
Third time's a charm. My name is Brownell Buckley. I actually live in Breckenridge, and I'm actually one of the original partners. So my brother-in-law is Win Lockwood, which is to say I was married to his sister. And my background is in civil engineering and land planning. And I have owned what is being discussed as transitional property since 1988. I have had discussions with Bob about 1993 ordinances that were passed that rezoned my property to R1. So I'm not sure why I'm being included in the transition discussion, because what Dan was saying is exactly correct. Transition was always intended to be, we don't know what we want this to be yet. We'll take a look at it when somebody brings in a proposal. I do know, because this has been part of my gainful life, that wetlands can't be developed. They can't be developed without there being offsets. You have to get an Army Corps of Engineers 404 permit. 404 refers to Section 404 of the Clean Water Act. You can't put fill, you can't disturb the land, you can't do anything with it unless and until you have this 404 permit. Secondly, the state has its own water quality rules and regulations that if you happen to fall below the thresholds for the Army Corps of Engineer 404 permit, you still have to go to the state. So the likelihood of being able to be approved to build in wetlands is really, really small. The first question on any of the wetlands applications is there an alternative? And if there is no better alternative, then they'll look at it
And in the case of airports, which is what I used to design, you can't move an airport. And where do they usually build them? The cheapest land possible. Where's the cheapest land possible? Wetlands. So any extension to a runway has to damage wetlands. And that triggers mitigation, usually on a multiple, either 2 to 1 up to 5 to 1, depending on how valuable the wetlands are, that have to be replaced in order to do the airport extension, the runway extension. So my point is that anybody who owns land that has wetlands isn't looking to develop the wetlands. They're looking to develop the dry lands that are around the wetlands, that are separate from the wetlands. And it is, apart from the fact that it's really expensive to try to put foundations or foundation structures in organic soils. For so many reasons, it's a good idea to value the wetlands and let that be part of the open space that an owner is going to enjoy. So I really would ask that you look at what's available to build. In Spruce Valley Ranch, that subdivision was done in 1977, and the second filing, where the larger lots are, was in 1978. The Clean Water Act was under President Nixon's, the EPA was established under Nixon, and the Clean Water Act came out of the EPA. So in 1977, the Clean Water Act was barely known. But by the time 1980 rolled around, let's say they were doing all the development over at Keystone, a lot of that was in the wetlands. And it wound up being very expensive for the developers because they thought they could just blow and go. And no, they've got federal government, federal people looking down their throats. They've got state people. They've got the engineers that are supposed to be monitoring what they're doing. Even 7 years after the establishment of the EPA, there was pretty strict enforcement, especially in headwaters areas. And so, I think it's a good idea to look at Spruce Valley, but I think it's a good idea to know what you're looking at when you look at Spruce Valley. Most of the lots in filing 1 were 2 to 2.4 acres. And it was zoned R1. But the interesting twist was that it was allowed a main house and a guest house, which to me is 2 houses, maybe different sizes. The minimum allowed for a main house was 3,500 square feet. The maximum allowed for the guest house was 2,500 square feet. The property that I have that's down off of the Blue River, and the property that I have up above is, I'm proposing that it be R1 in the honest sense of it, that R1 means 1 structure and not a guest house as well. So I think that when you take a look at what you're considering with this transition zone, anybody, I think Dan's right, anybody looking to annex into the town is going to say, I really don't want to do this touchy-feely thing about what I might get or might not get. I'll want to know with assurances what the town's going to approve for my property if I annex.
I will note that the 5 minutes that Linda has.
Okay.
I sure do. Can we just let?
It's a board, yes. I just want to make that statement. Okay, thank you.
You can extend the time as long as it's due for everyone. Same amount. Yeah, I mean, frankly, I didn't even know this meeting was happening. I just
thought I'd come in and see what Chad Hall looked like.
Parking lot decided to stop them.
Yeah, well, and I realized that, the Theobald, or Robin Theobald and his family are the other major transition owners. I'm not sure what Bob's feeling is, as I wrote him about the rezoning that took place in the 1990s. I don't even know how many people here at this meeting were there in 1990 when I did the first application. What I would like is that the focus be on where the property is that's getting developed. So for example, there's lot 42 at Spruce Valley Ranch, which is a flag lot. It doesn't have much more than 100 feet of frontage, maybe even not that much. And then the driveway extends back, the lot opens up. And that's part of filing too. That's part of the larger lots. And had the regulations been different, maybe Wynn would have looked at having smaller lots on that filing too. But as it was, in order to, there was a restriction because of registration of property being subdivided as a security if you went 50 lots or more. So Wynn made the good choice of saying, okay, there'll be 49 lots. There are 40 lots in the first filing, and then 8 more, or 41 lots in the first filing, and then 8 more in the second filing. And I think you'll find that the second filing has 75-foot setbacks because there's more land, as opposed to 50-foot setbacks in the filing one. And I'm not sure, because that one just went past me. And I'm sorry to be coming here sort of as Johnny come lately, even though I've been here since the 70s. But, I do agree with Paul that one of the things that was crystal clear in the master plan, and I was on that committee, was to preserve the open space, the rural feeling here, and the desire to, I know it was one of the points made, to keep development off of mountain peaks or, ridge lines. And it was also intended that if a 4-acre R1 lot is zoned, that 4-acre R1 lot not get re-subdivided into two 2-acre lots, as has happened. So, I don't think there's any magic to a 4-acre lot. I think there's magic to knowing what you're going to build, what is buildable, and how are you going to how is the development going to enhance the wetlands, preserve the wetlands, and stay out of the wetlands, whether it's for leach fields or decks or any, how do you preserve the hydraulic capacity of a wetland? Well, you preserve it by not messing with it. And, where we have a drought year this year, it doesn't seem like much of an issue, but those of us who were around in 1983 and saw what happened with the incredible runoff, we're pretty glad that we had wetlands that could serve as a sponge and retain some of the water instead of just having it blow right through. I don't know if you have any other questions, but
I haven't come to subdivide because there's a moratorium on subdivision. And I honestly was coming here to see if anybody was talking about lifting the moratorium it's been in place for 5 years. I can't do anything while the moratorium's in place. And I'm getting old.
Well, I appreciate your comments. I don't know if we need to kind of move on a little bit.
That's fine.
So I appreciate.
No issue. I mean, I've said what I need to say for me. I don't know if there are other questions that somebody, because there's a lot of sort of loosey-goosey, well, it's like Spruce Valley, 75-foot setbacks. Well, that's only for 8 of the 49 lots. They don't all have 75-foot setbacks. They don't all have big frontages either. And, and some of the smaller ones have double driveways, which is one of the things that the Planning Commission, Blue River Planning Commission has said no to. So, we learn by mistakes, and I'm concerned that this treatment of land as a zoning designation as transitional is not going to give you what you want. It's not going to give you what the master plan asks for.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm glad I got here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. No, you're good.
Oh, is there any other public comment? So I'll close public hearing, and then, did I hear that we want to postpone this, or what is?
I would make that we postpone it and have more discussion.
Which means we table the next.
Or special meeting, whatever you guys want to do, but I'm not prepared to make a decision based on.
Formations and such.
Would the town be open to hearing public comment on subdivisions? They go lockstep. And if you table it, it just kicks the can farther. So it's healthy discussion here tonight. Very healthy.
So let's,
Because I'd like to get Bob's comments and about on a lot of what we've heard tonight, because I have a lot of others, more questions have popped into my mind. So.
Heather, how do you feel? Because we either need to table it or do a motion.
So tabling it just means we kick the can
To the special meeting for
Well, special meeting or subsequent regular meeting, depending on which
next
is
agenda item.
goal or
I would
what,
like
yeah.
to have a special meeting.
I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page.
The type of ordinance this is, by state law requires 15 days notice publication in the newspaper. So if we're gonna push it to another day, it's gonna have to at least be far enough out that Chad can get to the paper, get 15 days of notice publication. So probably the most reasonable time would be the next meeting in July.
Correct, because the deadline for publication is Tuesday at 5 p.m. So it would not be able to be posted in this Friday's one, it would have to be the subsequent Fridays.
But right or wrong, we could do it and at the special meeting have an executive session about it and discuss it, and then have it posted for the next meeting and be able to have all our ducks in a row and knowledge out there to make a decision.
If there's enough time between the special meeting for the special meeting and the executive session, publication of that. You might just want to publish it for the next meeting, for the next.
No, I'm saying we could do both.
You could-
I'm saying do both, yes. So have an executive session about it, but publish it now for the next.
Correct, in the special session, executive session.
Okay. So
That's
sounds
what
like,
I'd like to talk about.
okay. So I guess we'll move on to old business. Looks like none.
We need a motion.
We need a motion to move it?
Yeah.
Oh, my bad.
We also have some this one, so you could make a motion to push both of them, because they do. They are, and they can go to a public hearing at the same time.
Okay.
You can open up to public comment.
Dan really wants to say something.
Well, it would
I'm
be,
good with it.
I think it's useful to have the discussion because you haven't heard much of the metal in that, and there's support. And it was not to stop large parcel subdivisions.
Yeah, I just wanna like.
It's up to you whether you want to entertain comment at this time on the subdivision.
Do you wanna entertain comment?
I would. I would like to make a motion to postpone voting on the ordinance 2026-05 and 2026-06, but to hear public comment from Dan.
Or anyone else.
Or anyone else. And or have then executive session and special meeting and the next ordinance we voted on in July.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
No votes?
So, thank you all, and I don't mean to, it's just, we're not privy to your executive sessions, right? So you're gonna have one. No one's gonna be in there. So the history of this moratorium, I had a lot to do with it, and it wasn't to make it go on this long, that's the truth. The goal of the board at that time was not to allow subdivision of neighborhood lots, right? We're gonna boil it down to simple, neighborhood lots, okay? So we had a Luis Placer lot that wanted to get subdivided. That neighborhood has large parcels, has its lots of steep slopes. The acreage is just a hill. So not to like say, hey, the county's doing everything right, because they're not, but the county doesn't, they look at steep slopes, wetlands, and like topographical features when they talk about subdivision, which I think Brownell brought up. But, one of the things that maybe isn't true about what he brought up is wetlands regulations, right? The feds are not regulating wetlands like they once did. So all be advised of that. If one thing comes out of this meeting under other business, it would be nice if the board directed staff to work with the planning commission to draft regulations of a wetland buffer. We're already working on it because you said we could, but you should direct staff. And with that, and I don't know if you'd have to talk to your legal counsel, you should institute this, pending ordinance. There will be a buffer around wetlands, unless you all say no. But your planning commission will come away with something for a recommendation for you. So not to get off topic, but steep slopes and wetlands, those are critical when you're talking about subdivision. Because you don't want to stick a lot with a bunch of that. And then just say, yeah, we got this little building envelope. Yeah, you can, but why? Yes, if it's a buffer, if it's a natural buffer, or if it's private open space, how great. But not if it's just this tiny lot with all this wetland. So anyway, we instituted that moratorium because we didn't want to see neighborhood lots getting subdivided. We never did it from the original code, our OG code, and I think it was 2006 when it was adopted. We didn't allow subdivision of residential. When Ruby Placer came forward in 2014, the code was changed to allow it. Unknowingly, the attorney at the time said, you're gonna have to allow subdivision, here's how we do it. We put in some sort of very primitive, very poorly written language on how to subdivide. But the reality is that was an annexation, and that wasn't gonna be subject to the same subdivision regulations anyway. Your attorney can tell you that, but that is fact. So we have this moratorium in place, it needs to go away. No one in the town really wants to see the neighborhoods cut up, even if you got large parcels. And maybe you don't care, and that's okay if you don't. You can just do what you want. It might only affect 6 or 8 lots, I can't say. But the reality is that these large parcels, they afford larger homes, those are higher property values, and that's how Luis Placer is, man. It's big houses. We ended up with 2 on 2 parcels because we had to allow the subdivision, despite no one really wanting it because it was in the code, okay? Just like our wetlands currently, it's in the code. You can build up to a wetland. So we want to change that. But if you're gonna remove the moratorium on subdivision, one thing you might want to consider is just say something to the effect of no subdivision of R1 lots created on or prior to, or any lot that was in existence prior to 6/16/26, or whatever date your attorney tells you. That's just one way he's gonna think up a better one, and that's only if you want him to. The other is to say no subdivision of any R1 lot. You know, the reality is that TD would have to already like go PRD anyway in order to chop up into whatever they want it to be if they don't want to become R1. But you could allow a TD lot to become R1 at 2 acre or 80,000 square feet. Getting off topic, but essentially, whatever you do, if you're looking to not allow subdivision of neighborhood lots, all of the ones that are already in existence, but you're not worried about Mr. Bailey or the Theobald's parcels, and you want to let them have decent development with something that makes sense, that doesn't fill a lot with wetlands or steep slopes or less desirable development, then you just say you can't subdivide R1 that was in any lot that was platted prior to some date. This is a not legal advice type of thing, so you have to talk with your attorney. However, the exception, the critical exception is you need to allow plat amendments, plat vacations, and plat corrections per Article 5, 6, and 9, like, you know, respectively. It's critical because people are going to want to combine lots. They might want to change some lines. They might have 2 lots they need to move things around. Those are simple, but minor and major subdivisions, they really should be limited to large parcels, which are transitional. So I just think, like, I don't advocate, I'm not getting a paycheck. I just think this is how it should have been done long ago. And so I appreciate y'all's giving us the time to speak. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah, anybody else? Okay.
I already abused my time. Thank you for your tolerance.
I'll go ahead and then close the public hearing and then there was a motion on it. We did that. Okay. Mayor and trustee reports. I'm gonna go. The mayor's not here and I don't have a report.
Any other trustees have any other items worth that report?
The Wildfire Council meets tomorrow. I missed the last transit board meeting due to illness. But I'll be at the next, and I'll be there. That's all I have.
Thank you. Bob, you got anything?
No.
All right. I have a pretty short one this go around, just for the existing information that's already been going on has covered most of it. The May financial reports included, and generally as a positive spin. I admittedly have not been able to look at it as deeply as I would like given the circumstances, but not really items of concern to note related to the financial report. Update on fire restrictions in Summit County. This was written at a time that the information is different than it is now. The Summit County will be shifting into a very high Summit fire indicator. That doesn't necessarily have a restriction strapped to it, but it is moving from high to very high. Last week has been extremely dry. I'm sure everyone knows that. And once again, a reminder about the Goose Master Tarn. Information's up and active. We have one combined application. Hang tag must be visible, and you must get hang tags. Hang tags must be visible on the rear view mirror or dashboard during tarn usage, and it's limited to town residents, long-term renters. If permit is transferred and guests of town residents, provided the town residents accompany the guests during tarn usage at all times. You guys have heard the spiel already, so I'll move on. Brief broadband update. Have had discussion with Upper Blue regarding their trenching going on along Highway 9. We'll need to really discuss that in more detail before I have any more information to finalize and bring before the board. It is the hopeful intent that I can scrounge up some resources and time to provide an application to the state for that middle mile broadband installation. I have no indication or guarantees of funding or not funding, but it is a goal and intent to get that application out the door. And once again, as we've discussed, I would like to institute a policy to address agenda items on how they are implemented into the agenda. what a suitable policy looks like for our particular town, and the policy of having one standard board meeting a month versus two, as in many other municipalities, or work sessions separate from the board meeting. Did various iterations, working with how we have our structure set up. And I'll try to find more information and details as soon as the day as I can feasibly provide them. And we've already covered summer road maintenance, so there's really nothing more to say on that front. The basic upkeep is already underway and is ongoing, and it is these capital projects are necessary and important to preserve water flow, preserve road quality, all those things of that nature, but it may involve some challenges and hurdles of getting approval and buy-in from various residents to conduct all of the capital improvements that are suggested. So that's really all I got on my side of things.
I'd like to start with, does anybody have any questions for the police department?
Just how is it going with the tags?
Actually, that is going well. It's provided us with a great avenue for education when we go down there and people don't have them, and a process for people to resolve applying for and getting their tags so they can be down there. So that's going great. And actually, they're big enough and bright enough as we drive by, sometimes we can even verify that they're in the car. So we're very happy with that so far.
We intend to also implement some extra signage along the boundaries, the delineated boundaries in the contract.
I don't know if it's part of the road maintenance contract though, but I briefly spoke earlier. Was wondering if we could maybe get that resurfaced or graded or something, that the entrance into the tarn, because it's a little bit bumpy and catawampus as you go down through there. I don't know how that would be handled.
We'll have to have more discussions.
Right, that's just my request.
There's some other hurdles going on that might make that a little more challenging.
What's that?
Private ownership, CDOT right away.
I do want to ask you a question on that, Chief. So it seems as though, because it's coming out of the tarn is the bigger issue, people spinning their tires on the gravel, and it's a straightaway where people get speed. Do you consider that a little bit of a safety issue?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I've said before, sometimes people are competing for that same space. Someone coming out, someone trying to get in. It's not very open. I've had issues myself where I try to pull in there and people are coming out.
Can I just?
I don't disagree.
Can I get your opinion, another opinion? Do you think partially paving that would help? Not the whole thing, but just entering, maybe 20 feet back from the highway.
So as you pointed out, the people accelerating and digging up the dirt to try to get on the highway as cars are approaching at 45 plus miles an hour, it might eliminate that or help cars gain traction to enter the highway at a better speed. But also you could possibly, if the road is paved, define the parameters of the road a little more so people understood like what is accessible, because people just want to drive right to the middle of that dirt section.
Like
yeah, we could maybe just help define that area a little bit better.
I think it would also be a discussion of traffic control and use of the other adjacent access point that is blocked off. So that would be for a one-way stream of traffic. We just have to make those discussions of what is the optimal use and how we'd like to.
It would be probably ideal to have people come in on that and go on the other. Has anybody talked to the Theobald family about that? If it's even feasible? Yeah. If they're in favor of trying to do it? Are they, John?
Yeah, but nothing formal. It'll just be a dirt path. But like maybe some type of boulders or something, so people couldn't drive on the grass between there and the tarn, but it'd be up against the hillside. You would exit on the north and come in on the south.
So they'd be in favor of allowing an exit on that side.
We've talked about it.
Is that something we could? Because that is, I've always been concerned about the safety of that one entrance and exit.
Well, there was some talk that the town of Breck did not revegetate the area where they stored all their equipment and all their stuff to the dam. So asking them to do something like that, maybe contributing some gravel.
It was people drove on it because there weren't stones in place, and then it couldn't grow.
But it was just it's all weeds.
Yeah.
So, John, I know you said there's complications. Is there a way we can kind of continue this conversation with the evolved and the chief to try to get, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that it is appropriate. We can continue those conversations. I'm not entirely privy to what the whole slate of challenges might be associated with that, so I'll say that with a grain of salt attached to that discussion. So, but yes, it is possible.
And one challenge is gonna be the state highway access control plan. We agreed to follow what most municipalities do, which give the state control over whether or not we're gonna make another exit or entrance off of it. That we have to get rid of.
Well, if the evolves are in favor of doing it, I would think we should pursue it. It's my opinion. Yes.
I think they're not averse to it. I'm not
I think it's their
100% sold
private
on.
property.
Yeah, I'm
so
not
they
100% sold on their
for
favor
the
of it, but then other than that,
conversation. I mean, we can approach, but it's their conversation. Bring forth not ours. We can
Well,
approach and ask, but it's their property.
I know that, but we're asking to try to make it more safe to do it. And if they're open to that conversation, then why don't we do it? Or is there some reason we wouldn't?
I don't think there's any reason why we wouldn't. Yeah. It's already been a conversation piece. It just needs to be revisited.
And if they right off the bat aren't not in favor of that, then you're right, there's no reason to have conversations. But it sounds like when I've heard they might be open to it.
Meet him out there, discuss it again.
I'm happy to carry on with the discussions as directed by.
As I was down there the other day and there's a lot of traffic down there.
Agreed. Yeah.
It's the only lake with water.
Pardon?
It's the only lake with water.
Yeah, that is true.
Good point. Any other matters to be brought? Yeah.
I just want to address some comments that were made earlier. The chief of police, myself, had nothing to do with the firing or removal of the last code ambassador that was here. And also, we have never indicated that enforcing town code is outside our scope. It's very important to understand that there's criminal code, public health, safety, and welfare that we do address. And there's administrative code that is outside technically our jurisdiction or our authority. So building permits and stuff like that. So, and in fact, if you look at our report, code enforcement has been the second highest reported call for service that we've had. We've had over 64 of them since May. So we are responding to code enforcement as appropriate.
Yes.
I'm going to advise that we also let the public know that after the executive sessions, we'll no further discussion of public business. So they don't feel like we're going to come back and talk about stuff that they should be here for. So we'll just come back after executive session and adjourn.
Yeah. So. Then, okay, pursuant to CRS 26.402 or B, to receive legal advice and answer questions concerning the legal process for managing and administering offices and staff.
If I could add one, just 5 minutes.
Please, yeah.
And somebody who so moved on this one would be pursuant to CRS 24-6-424B, to receive legal advice and answer questions concerning the application of the state location and extent statute and House Bill 1041 property.
So moved. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for having us.